Hard to overstate how loud the headlines were after Wednesday's joint practice in Allen Park. Reporters on the ground called it as lopsided a joint NFL practice as I've ever seen, and the clips and tweets made it feel like Detroit steamrolled Miami for 2 full hours. What started as one practice turned into a showcase of Lions discipline and Dolphins disarray, and while mid-August drama always deserves a grain of preseason salt, there are real, practical takeaways here for both clubs. Yahoo Sports, at the surface, Detroit's attack looked disciplined, physical, and fundamentally sound. Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Lions' offense repeatedly beat Miami's coverage in one-on-ones and team drills. The Lions' defense turned red zone reps into a string of stops, and Detroit's pass rush consistently got home or forced quick throws. Reporters who were there said the Lions dominated both sides of the ball and that Miami's first-team offense had a painfully hard time generating productive drives against Detroit's starters. That kind of uniform execution across phases is what turns a joint practice from competitive to lopsided. Pride of Detroit. Why this matters and what likely caused it comes down to 4 connected factors. First, scheme and matchup. The Lions brought a physical, disciplined game plan that exploited mismatches and tested Miami's communication and tackling fundamentals. Second, injuries and availability. Miami arrived with some depth issues on the OL and at other spots, which magnified the gap when Detroit sent pressure or tested mismatches. Third, intensity and buy-in. Detroit showed a higher level of competitive juice in that session. Joint practices are as much about mental dominance as technical chops, and they leveraged that edge to control situational drills. Finally, execution under pressure. Miami's offense repeatedly stalled in red zone and full drive reps, a sign that communication and pocket cohesion were out of sync at times. Multiple accounts point to all of these elements combining to make the practice ugly for Miami. Larry Brown, Sports. Now the nuance in the coaching response. Joint practices are intentionally designed to create controlled chaos. Teams willingly expose weaknesses so coaches can find them and fix them. Mike McDaniel's Dolphins will tear the tape, highlight the breakdowns, and re-emphasize fundamentals. A single lopsided practice isn't a season verdict. It's a diagnostic. That said, the Dolphins can't treat this like normal back-of-the-book trimming. The optics are bad, and optics influence opponent game planning, media narratives, and locker room confidence. So Miami needs quick, visible improvements in practice habits, communication on protection calls, and finishing blocks tackles in the next sessions. Publicly, McDaniel and Tua framed it as a frustrating day and called for growth. Privately, expect heavier focus on red zone execution and OL cohesion. NFL.com for Detroit, this is the exact kind of message you want from a joint camp. It validates off-season work and raises the internal ceiling. But they should avoid overreaction euphoria too. Dominating a practice doesn't guarantee game success. Detroit should use the win to solidify techniques, not inflate play calls that might not translate against other opponents. Still, the confidence boost for the defense and for players like St. Brown is valuable heading into the preseason slate and into the season proper. Pride of Detroit. What to watch next? Short, concrete metrics over the coming 7 to 10 days. 1. Does Miami show immediate improvement in red zone and third down conversion rates in practice and in the next preseason game? 2. How does the OL rotate? Are backups getting more reps, or does Miami shuffle personnel's technique to plug holes? Are there any injury reports or roster moves tied to performance liabilities, especially on the OL or in the secondary? 4. For Detroit, do the same coverage concepts and pressure packages continue to succeed against other opponents, or was Miami a stylistic outlier? Answering those 4 will separate a meaningful warning sign from a temporary fluke. ESPN Southwest Florida. Finally, the temperament piece for fans and media. Preseason theater invites hot takes, and joint practices especially so. The right response for Miami is not to panic, but to treat this as a loud alarm that demands immediate coaching attention and better execution. For Detroit, it's a moment to tighten edges, not loosen belts. Football is an iterative sport. Teams correct and adapt, but this practice lit a warning flare that's impossible to ignore. If nothing else, it handed both front offices urgent homework. Detroit must prove it can replicate the standard it showed, and Miami must demonstrate that the issues seen in Allen Park were fixable and fixed. Larry Brown Sports. Bottom line, the Lions earned a legitimacy boost on the tape. The Dolphins earned a documentable problem to solve. In August, that's exactly what joint practices are for. Brutal honesty before the games actually count. If Miami learns quickly, this will be a blip. If they don't, it's an early warning sign that could echo into September. The Miami Dolphins' joint practice with the Detroit Lions on Wednesday quickly turned into an uncomfortable evening for the visitors. What was supposed to be a useful tune-up, a chance to sharpen technique, tighten communication, and simulate game day intensity, instead became a lopsided reminder that training camp reps can expose glaring weaknesses just as easily as they build confidence. Multiple reporters who watched the full session used the same blunt adjective, lopsided. A pair went further, calling it the most one-sided joint practice they'd seen. That's not hyperbole in August. It's a real warning light. Detroit dominated physical matchups, won the line of scrimmage battles, and routinely disrupted Miami's timing. Coverage breakdowns, missed assignments, and a lack of consistent pass rush allowed the Lions to control the tone from the first whistle to the final drill. For the Dolphins, the optics are bad because they come amid lingering questions about on-field chemistry and mental focus. Mike McDaniel's offense thrives on timing, quick decision-making by the quarterback, and coordinated route structures. When the protection faltered and receivers failed to create separation, the offense sputtered. On the other side of the ball, Miami's defense looked slow to diagnose plays and late to rally, which only amplified the impression the Lions were running through the Dolphins rather than matching them. That said, context matters. It's August football. Guys are building toward a season, not peak performance. Joint practices are intentionally grueling environments designed to stress players in a way practice against your own team doesn't. Some of the disarray can be chalked up to fatigue, early installment confusion, and the inevitable rust of training camp. Players will fix technique, coaches will tweak game plans, and individual reps will be corrected. The season is still weeks away, but reality demands accountability. The Dolphins coaching staff must treat the tape from Wednesday as a corrective roadmap. Offensive line fundamentals, communication on stunts, leverage on second-level blocks, and finishing blocks in space need immediate emphasis. The receivers must sharpen separation techniques and route discipline to give the quarterback cleaner reads. Defensively, gap integrity, tackling angles, and situational awareness during 2-minute drills should be drilled repeatedly until they're second nature. Leadership will be essential. Veterans must set the tone in the meeting rooms and on the field. Younger players need clearer, simpler roles to reduce mental errors. The biggest takeaway is that Miami can't afford to sleepwalk through fundamentals because the AFC is deep and mistakes compound quickly. Ultimately, practices like Wednesday can be useful if treated honestly. If coaches and players accept the embarrassment, prioritize correction, and reinforce fundamentals, this ugly stretch could be the spark that fixes problems before week 1. If ignored or brushed off, it's the beginning of a narrative that could be much harder to shake when the games start counting.